It was a big election night for the Republicans, obviously winning throughout the South, especially limited wins for Democrats. But one of the big ones for the Republicans, one of the lucky men, was Matt Bevin, who we've talked about on the program before. He became governor of Kentucky. You might remember him from such campaign strategies as lying about his educational record and hanging out with homophobic County Clerk Kim Davis. But yeah, he won. Now, he didn't win. He didn't become governor because he so stimulated the people of Kentucky that they came out in droves to support him. In fact, it was a historically poor turnout. Preliminary results show that only 30.7% of voters actually cast a ballot in this off-year election, it being neither a presidential nor a congressional election year. That compares with 46% of voters in 2014, which, by the way, was the lowest they'd ever recorded since World War II. They get 50% of that this year. And about 60% of voters during the 2012 presidential race. And look, we're going to talk about some of the disastrous consequences of Matt Bevin potentially becoming the governor of Kentucky. He actually is the governor, but some of the consequences are potential. But this is a bad sign regardless, that you can have elections and have people so disinterested that 1 out of 3 or less than 1 out of 3 actually turn out to vote. And when the governor gets in, he can, for instance, possibly just cancel Obamacare for the state. Like, the huge consequences, and so few people are actually involved in those.
Right. I mean, there's usually higher turnout during, presidential elections, as you mentioned in that previous graphic. But one thing to keep in mind is, yes, political apathy is a huge problem, especially in this instance. But another problem is, there are certain resources that are necessary to be a voter, right? And those resources go beyond getting to a place to vote, being able to find the transportation for it. You need resources in terms of researching and keeping up with the political, movements in your area. And a lot of people don't have those resources, right? A lot of people in Kentucky live in poor rural areas. And so if they don't have the education necessary or the transportation or the money necessary in order to vote, then it becomes more difficult. And keep in mind, voting does take a lot. It seems very easy to people who have these resources at their disposal, but a lot of people don't have them. So political apathy and, lower socioeconomic status usually plays a role in low voter turnout.
Yeah, and we know that people who are in a stable economic situation are more likely to vote. So like transients and people who have recently lost their job, the poorer people who traditionally do tend to vote Democratic more are less likely. And we know that it's already hard enough in most places because very few people get the day off. For some reason, Democracy Day isn't a thing in America. And so people would need to take work off, which thankfully some of them, most of them by a narrow margin, do so when it's a presidential election. But when it's, in a couple of states you have the governor, but for the most part it's these much lower either ballot initiatives or lower elected offices. And taking a day off of work when you work multiple jobs is not easy. So as you say, it does cost a lot. Now, it might cost them something else because the fear is that now in Kentucky, Matt Bevin is going to roll back the prior expansion of Medicaid under Obamacare in Kentucky. So last February, when asked about the law's Medicaid expansion, Bevin responded that he would absolutely reverse it. No question about it, I would reverse that immediately. Now, that's gotten a lot of coverage recently, especially since he won the election. So he has since softened his position a bit and said that he would move about 420,000 of the newly covered Kentuckians off the state-run exchange and onto the federal exchange before repealing the Medicaid expansion overseen by the predecessor. Now, what does that actually mean for a particular Kentuckian? We have no idea at this point. And we also have evidence we're going to present to you that he is a goddamn liar. So we can't even trust
one at that.
An insane liar. Like a guy you went to high school with who stayed in your hometown level liar. And so we're supposed to believe him that 500,000 people in Kentucky aren't going to lose their health insurance. Now, this was released by a Democratic spokesman after he won. Republicans called Matt Bevin an East Coast con man and a pathological liar. That's what the Republicans called him. But he can't deny what he put in print. Bevin supports a repeal of Medicaid that would kick nearly 500,000 Kentuckians off their health care. And just to give you an idea of how trustworthy of a guy he is, his LinkedIn account inaccurately claimed an education from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which screenshots demonstrate, but Bevin flatly denied the reference and said it had been made up as an absolute lie. No, he claimed it. He claimed that he went to MIT, but he did not.
The current or the newly elected governor of Kentucky lied about going to MIT on his LinkedIn account.
Yeah.
That is.
Turns out he went to Chick-fil-A,
That
actually.
is the direct consequence. That's hilarious. That's a direct consequence of low voter turnout.
Exactly,
but
yeah.
There's worse.
Yeah, and by the way, this is how bad of a liar you have to be. He is the only person who's ever gotten caught lying on his resume about where he went to school. Nobody looks into that, but you want to be the governor and you don't think to perhaps cover your tracks a little bit, you moron?
By the way, here's the thing. If you are running for public office and you want to lie about your education, you probably can get away with it, right? Especially if people aren't paying close attention to you. But like, don't go with like Harvard or like
MIT or
MIT. Like, I don't know. Go with like a state school or something.
Go for UConn.
Yeah,
I was
something.
gonna look into that. I went there, by the way, so don't get mad at me.
Right. It's just hilarious. It would be like, I don't know, running for president and saying you went to Harvard when you didn't go to Harvard, when you actually went to like, I don't know, Texas A&M or something, which is also a great university, but you know what I mean.
Okay, this is going to be the hour of the show where we just randomly throw state-level schools under the bus.
No, by the way, I went to a state-level school and they're awesome. So.
Exactly, and so did I.
Yeah, and I
so
teach
booyah.
at one as well.
Also, Bevin denied his involvement in a rally last year to legalize cockfighting in Kentucky until a reporter confronted him with video evidence of the candidate expressing his support for the illegal sport as the state's rights issue.
No, but that's the amazing thing. I mean, so many Republicans don't get that when you're on the internet or when you're recorded, film, tape doing something, it will exist forever because of the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like Mitt Romney couldn't get that across his head when he was running for president. He would flip-flop constantly and be like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. Well, here's a video of you changing your mind several times. And in this case, he's like, yeah, man, I like cockfighting. Yeah. And then all of a sudden he's denying
Maybe
it.
he thought that he wasn't really paying attention. He thought they were talking about something else.
How can you
but
be
can
in
you
favor
imagine
of cockfighting?
Think about how disappointed you'd have to be. You are one of the proponents for legalizing cockfighting. And people, they attack you all the time as being inhumane to animals. And finally, you have your champion, Matt Bevin. And then he goes on the air and he cock blocks you yet again, like everyone else. It's never going to be legal, unfortunately, maybe in another country. But anyway, so look, he says he's not going, he says he's just going to move people onto the federal exchanges. That seems incredibly questionable to me, how he would actually do that, how many people would get left behind. And this is just one little Snapchat. Jesus Christ, I've been corrupted. Snapshot of how terrible last night's election was for Democrats. A number of state houses, state-level legislators, representatives, and senators lost to Republicans. Some governorships that we really thought we were going to be able to win, including Matt Bevin's spot, which, by the way, up until just a few days prior, the Democrat had been out polling him. But I think it was Michael Schor tweeted out that Howard Dean's 50-state strategy has finally had the last nail in its coffin nailed shut, I suppose. We used to think that we could compete around the country, but those resources were taken away. It was no longer prioritized, and that's how you get something like possibly 500,000 people losing their health care.